I'm just gonna, I need a minute to work to figure that out.
Okay.
Sorry.
Hello.
Hi,
Hi,
Peter.
Peter.
Hi, sorry I was late.
Okay. So the recordings are on now. And we want to get started.
All ready to go. Okay, well, thanks for joining. And I happen to be in Toronto, but I miss Bowen, but we can meet on Zoom, thank goodness. So we had an in-person meeting last time and a Zoom meeting this time, so we can see which one we like going forward. Which one is easier. So we'll start off with approval of the agenda. And if there's any changes or ideas people have, go ahead, Steph.
I can put it on
Should we use
screen.
the little hand raising thing if people want to talk? I think you can wave your physical hand, or you could use under reactions, there's kind of like an artificial hand if you don't want to wave. Okay, so Steph, what were you going to say?
I'll just put the agenda points on screen.
Yep.
What are you seeing?
I see community center grants, action review, accessibility planning, next steps.
Okay, so okay, and then under accessibility planning, we'll do review, maybe a quick review of the elements in existing plans, clarify the role of the committee, discuss the proposed framework. Does the framework work? If not, what will? And then start populating. Does that work for people?
I know everybody else is probably knows all of this, but I did have the experience teaching an online course. And one of the tricks I learned about Zoom is if you want to see all the faces, there's a little bar that separates the screen that is being shared with the text and the faces. So you can grab that bar and move it, and then you can see all the faces if that is what you would like to do. Otherwise, the face is cut off. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right. So if there's no comments on the agenda, does somebody want to recommend that we approve it? Okay, I saw Sue Ellen and then Peter. So everybody in favor? Anybody opposed?
Yes.
Sorry, that was a lag. Anybody opposed? All right, great. Thank you. And then we have the adoption of the minutes. So the minutes of the last meeting were circulated. And I did not spot any errors, but if did anybody spot anything that needs to be changed? All good. We have
is Peter putting his hand up? Or
I think he's just fixing something.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody like to recommend that we approve the minutes of last time?
Peter.
Okay, Peter. And a seconder.
Robin.
Robin, thanks. And Jen. Okay, everybody agree?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Anybody oppose? All right. You can remind me stuff. It's been a long time since I did Robert's rules, so I don't think it's going to be too tricky, but just in case I goof up, let me know.
Okay.
All right. And then I don't know if we have any public comments.
No public comments.
Okay. All right. So then the first topic, which I've been looking forward to hearing about this, is a report or a description for about 20 minutes of the community center project. by Jillian Drake, Manager of Recreation and Community Services. And then we can ask her questions about accessibility at the community center. So over to you, Jillian.
And everyone, thanks for inviting me to come. I've prepared a brief presentation to overview some of the features and then look forward to your questions. And I'm guessing some suggestions as well. So I'm all ears and really happy to listen to what you want to talk about here. So I'm just going to share my screen. And once we get going here, we're all set. Everybody sees that? Is that right?
Can I
Okay.
just before you launch into it, can I just say, you know, I'm a scientist. Life is an experiment. So since this is our first Zoom meeting, don't hesitate if something isn't working, or you need help, or we need to stop or slow down. You know, we'll just learn together. So so don't be shy. Go ahead. Go ahead, Jillian. Looks great.
Well, I think we should take some of that same approach to this building, quite honestly. This is our first biggest municipal facility for the island. So I think we're all learning together with this one, and look forward to seeing, you know, how it evolves over the next 10 years as well, once we're all in the space and using it. So so the first slide I have up here is just a floor plan of the facility itself. And the reason I've included that is just to show that there are some designated wheelchair parking spots. The two closest parking spots, one to the main entrance at the south of the building and the other one at the north end of the building. And then you can see there is about 15 parking spots right adjacent to the building as a whole. Then the balance of the parking is down the hill to the north end of the site.
Just for Jessica, can I just point out there's one of those parking spots is labeled as accessible, a handicap parking spot, is that right?
Two are designated for wheelchairs. Yeah.
So now this is my I got my reading glasses on, but my computer is not quite the right size. And you don't have a pointer, I guess, you can use for this?
Can you see me
So-
pointing now?
So
Can you see my
yes.
cursor? Okay.
Yeah. So could
Okay.
you actually,
Absolutely.
point to the things you were talking about?
Absolutely. So there's one parking spot right here, which is fairly close to the main front entrance of the building. So this front parking spot, if you were parked in this, your front would be facing the building. The rear of your vehicle would be looking at the grass field, the soccer field adjacent to the school, just to orient you there. And then the other wheelchair designated spot is around the back end of the building at the north entrance. And it's located very, very close to that rear door. And that's all at grade at that location.
And it's a hard surface?
Sorry. It is. It's all hard surface through there. So this
Jillian.
next,
So,
Just-
Jillian, can I just ask, is that a curb between the parking space and the rest of the community centre, or is it sort of possible to get a wheelchair up there?
it's very much intended for wheelchair. So it is curbless in that area. There's curb in other areas, but to facilitate, I'm sorry, that's not showing well in this drawing, but this is just more of a generalized floor
Yeah, no, I
plan,
appreciate
so-
that.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's also before you reach that very first parking spot, there is the capacity to drop off people. So you can pull into the site, pull over, drop off people out of the car and in a safe way, and then immediately exit the site or move on further into it to find parking.
So if somebody is is being picked up, so you talked about drop off, but if somebody's being picked up and it's pouring rain, they have a place where they can wait and be comfortable while their person is coming to pick them up?
Yes, there is a canopy that extends out from that front entrance to provide that shelter there. The majority, there is an entryway plaza, and the majority of that is not covered, but there is definitely an area of canopy in front of that front entrance.
I heard another voice, but I'm not sure who it was. Did somebody else want to say something? Okay, good.
One question.
Janet?
The entrance off of Trunk Road appears to be only one lane wide. Is that correct?
No, there will definitely be room for two vehicles to move past one another. So what we're seeing right now is the entrance for the construction is by and large the same location of where the main entrance will be, but it is not the correct width. So definitely will be wider to allow that passage. And it's wide enough. It's actually a fairly tricky location visibility wise at the crest, just almost at the crest of the hill there. So that's been taken into account as well. So there's a fairly wide turning lane into it as well.
Okay, thank you.
Shall I move to the next one?
Yes, I think we're at the door.
Okay, here we're almost at the door with this image here. This is it's a somewhat dated rendering of the front entrance, as you know now that it is not cedar siding that's going up and the metal's not this color, but I included this slide to demonstrate to show the wheelchair ramp that's adjacent to the building at this main entrance. So for wheelchairs or strollers or whatever is needed to use a ramp, this is the main front entrance of the building. The rear entrance to the building is at grade, so it doesn't require a step or a ramp to enter.
Hmm.
This is another rendering. So this is imagining that you have walked into the facility and you've walked through both double doors and the vestibule there, and immediately in front of you, if you were to look, you can look straight down the hall to the north end of the building. On your left, as you walk into the building, is the reception, the main reception for the facility. So that's where you would sign up for a recreation class, for example, or maybe you're interested in learning about rentals of the facility. So you would stop at that counter on your left. On your right, as you enter the building, it's a very open space. There are some columns defining the space, and structural as well, of course, in there. But so these columns are defining that corridor from this community living room that is on our right as we enter. And the intention of the community living room is it's a casual spot where anyone can come and gather and have conversations, or maybe little meetings that you want to have. Maybe you're waiting for somebody to come out of a class or being in the weight room. All the furniture is intended to be adjustable, modular, movable. The tables we're sourcing are accessible for wheelchairs as well. And it's just this big open community meeting space. Also to be used for receptions, potentially if someone wants to host an evening reception there, or before the theater, going into the theater, something like that.
So,
Yeah.
Sue Ellen, you have to unmute.
Thank you. Yes. And looking straight down to that clear panel at the end, is that the north entrance that's at grade that we're seeing there, Gillian?
What we're seeing at the very end of that hallway is actually a window, and the north entrance is just a little jog to the left, a little jog to the right, and it's immediately adjacent to that window.
Thank you.
So I have lots of questions. I don't know if we should take them as we go. So I don't know how many slides or what you think would be best, Jillian, but in my world, what I'm thinking about is the architecture, the built environment, the furnishings, as you said, the technology, and later on we can get to behaviors that could be encouraged or not in the space. But I'm seeing the ceiling looks like it has a series of wood, so I assume that was designed for attenuating noise. Was there a acoustical
There's
design?
Yeah, so pardon me, Kathy, I didn't mean to cut you off. Yeah, there are significant elements of acoustic treatments throughout the facility. So I think hopefully some of your questions I will have answered with my slides. Absolutely, I won't have answered most of them, I think, or a lot of them, but and I did tailor this presentation more around design as opposed to behaviors. And I think behaviors is where we have the most opportunity to influence potentially as we move into the new space. But I wonder if it would be best to go through the slides a bit and then come back to some of it. Is that okay
that's
to do
what
that?
I was just not sure how we should go. So why don't you go ahead, and then
Okay.
if that works for everybody, you can find a slide. We have questions and we need to go back.
Okay.
So we'll just be quiet for a while and let you go and note your questions. I guess we could even put questions in the chat if you want to keep track of them that way. All right.
But you're
the floor
absolutely right. You're seeing the drop ceiling of the corridor has wood paneling. It is an element of the acoustic treatment within that as well. And we'll see some more of those as we go. You may have noticed in the previous slide, and I apologize, Alex and Jessica, I didn't mention it, but there was the image there included a person in a wheelchair at that reception desk. So each one of the 3 reception desks in the facility, so there's one for the main reception and recreation, there's one for the Bowen Municipality General Administration reception, and there's also the building department reception. And each one of these desks has a dropped counter area, so someone who is seated can be served comfortably at that counter.
Thank you.
Just a few general comments about the facility here to talk about. So one of the changes that they implemented when we went to 2018 building code was to expand the hallway widths and really improve the turning radius ability for wheelchairs and increase sort of some of the overall foot area in the open spaces to ease some congestion if possible. The entry at the north and south, as I mentioned, one has a ramp, one's at grade. They both have push button operators on them. So both at seated height and at a lower height as well. There are 2 drinking water fountains or water refill stations within the facility at 2 different heights to accommodate different users there. There's been quite a lot of care taken choosing the colors of paints and finishings to enhance the contrast and the visibility. So things like floors to walls and the signage throughout the facility, which we're just starting to work on now, but we're taking care, looking at what is the font, what is the size of that font, the color, and looking at where, as much as possible, Braille will be included on that signage. And that's one of the areas that, Alex, sorry, maybe I hadn't told you this yet, but I'd love to talk to you more about that, about what are the key signs to have in Braille for the facility.
Yeah.
Great, thanks. All glass markings so floor to ceiling glass has to have markings on it. So none of us walk into that glass, as probably everybody has a story of someone who's walked into glass. But so looking at the color contrast on those glass markings, and by code, you only need to have it in one location, but we'll probably have it at the lower location as well. So upper and lower glass markings going across the width of of glass. They've taken a lot of care in the mounting heights of elements through and fixtures throughout the building, and I'll get into more of that a little bit further. All of the handles, all is a very dangerous word, isn't it? I believe that the vast majority of the handles throughout the facility are all grab free. So the doors are using push levers or handle levers. The millwork all has D-pulls. There's no knobs on anything, so that it's that grab free ability. In the large multi-purpose room, which is, this is the room that will be used for theatrical productions, and there's seating that can retract up against the wall, or when it's being deployed, it extends out from the wall for the seating. But the space has been fully designed to accommodate an additional row in front of that retractable seating that can accommodate movable chairs or wheelchairs or whatever the need is there. I mentioned the furniture in the community living room, which I should mention. We're very grateful that the Bowen Island Community Foundation is help funding that accessible furniture for that space, which is wonderful. All of the thresholds throughout the facility have been designed with so that there's no change in the height, the elevation of the thresholds at all throughout, and that's from room to room or inside and outside of the facility. Speaking about the bathroom facilities as a whole, I know there was a lot of thought that went into how these were designed. Now, the image that's in front of you is actually an early rendering, so it doesn't look precisely like this in this final version, but I don't have a more up-to-date one to include in this. So within this bathroom complex, we want to call it that, there are 2 universal toilets. There are 2 showers, one of which is a roll-in shower that can accommodate wheelchairs. There are also gendered bathrooms as well. And one of the design elements was that there are no doors on those gendered bathrooms, but they're designed in such a way that you can't see in or anything like that. But they're designed for that ease of access and not to have any doors. Grab bars throughout, and I mentioned the mounting heights before, so there's a lot of care taken into where the light switches, coat hooks, paper towel dispensers, and thermostats, things like that throughout the facility. They are considering the heights of those. The location of things like the paper towel dispensers and the change tables have been located in a way that ensures a person doesn't have to move back and forth across the room in order to do what they need to do within that one room. So they've been located in a way to improve movement and clearance, substantial clearance around each one of those fixtures. Again, the hardware selection, grab free, a lot of automated systems like the soap dispenser and paper towels and things like that. So it's not requiring pulling. And many of these elements do actually exceed the requirements for the 2018 BC Building Code. Moving to acoustics within the facility, there's just a few things we can see in the image that I have showing here. There's acoustic baffles that are suspended from the rafters within these rooms. So this room we're looking at here is the small multipurpose room. And this is the room where the play care program, which is one of our island's oldest programs, that takes care of the toddlers ages 1 through 5. They need a lot of acoustical treatment. And all those noisy little people, right? So, but these same baffles that are suspended, they're located as well in the living room as well. There are acoustical treatments on elements of the walls where possible. So some of the higher sections of wall actually have carpeting on them. There are some elements within this room or some surfaces that actually have acoustical treatment in the carpeting on them as well. But the large multi-purpose room or the theatrical, the performing arts room, that's where the greatest attention to detail has gone into the acoustical treatment. So for the production, to have the quality of sound within a production, all of the wood paneling has acoustical elements. There's it's just throughout every possible element of that building. There's extra insulation within all the ductwork. The ductwork is actually the diameter of the components of it are larger, to that sort of increases how the air moves through it and decreases the sound. So there's treatments, and it's very, very well insulated all around all of those. So within the acoustical treatments, there's elements to absorb, there's elements to reflect, and there's elements to hear oneself if you're performing. So without knowing all the details of it, I could tell you that there has been a huge amount of thought gone into this. And even in the basement that's immediately below this room, there's extensive insulation in the flooring there. So all of those systems, all the mechanical systems within the basement, the sound from those don't permeate up into the theatrical space either. Also within this room, and I really apologize, I was not able to find information. I know this is probably one of the areas of greatest interest, but when I was speaking with the architect last week, she was saying she had to look up what it was, but there was some element of assisted listening technology in the large multipurpose room. It's not a hearing loop. And I apologize, I'll have to get you more information about what that is that's designed for the space. And as I say, I just don't have that available today. Council chambers, or the community conference room, is another room where the acoustics are really important. As many of you may know, there's the meetings there that are held on Zoom. Sometimes the sound can be challenging. So there are additional acoustic treatments in the ceiling. And one of the ideas to improve that is to get microphones that are actually at each council member's spot, so that it's more directed microphones for that person who's speaking, as opposed to, or in addition to, the overhead microphones that we have right now. So I believe that's the end of my presentation. So I might stop sharing, and now you can ask me all your questions.
I see there's some in the chat.
Oh,
Yeah, I put a bunch of things in there just so I could remember them. But I'm happy to, we could just go around, or does anybody have any questions they want to ask about? I'm just going to go on my screen. Janet, any comments or questions?
Regarding the ductwork, what is the source of heating?
it's an HVAC system.
Okay, and is that a heat pump?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and is there any particular additional air filtration system that filters the air at a higher level than what with COVID and people being particularly sensitive to indoor air systems because of pandemic, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And I did see something just recently about the need for really vastly improved air systems for indoor use.
I don't have a
Okay.
I don't have a good answer for you there, so I can look into that.
Yeah. Okay. No, thank you. It just kind of popped into my mind that
Breathing is good. Breathing is good.
breathing is good. Healthy air is good. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of the rooms do have operable windows, so that they can be opened up. So, for the weight room and the fitness studio, you can open up windows on either side of the room for that airflow.
Right. Okay.
So next person on my screen is Peter. Any comments or questions?
Well, this sort of just seeing it from my own point of view. One thing that I find for myself, not being that mobile, is that in seating, like the lounge seating, often chairs are very low and it's difficult to get out of them. So I don't know what the design of the chairs is, but it's always helpful for people like me and a lot of older people to have a good armrest on each side, so something reasonably high you can push yourself up with when you're standing to get out of a chair.
I agree.
Well, we haven't actually ordered them yet, so I've written it down, and we'll make sure that we select chairs that aren't too low and have that armrest. Absolutely.
I mean, it is nice to slouch into a low chair, and but when it comes to getting up again, for me, that's a big problem. But they don't obviously all have to be like that, but it would be helpful if there were some.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yes.
And I think it's great, Peter, like everybody should be thinking what would work for them, and contribute that. So that's great. I heard another.
Sorry. I must concur. Having had 2 hip replacements, I'm very much aware of the need for being able to get out of low seating more easily afterwards. It's any orthopedic surgeon will tell you, don't lean forward too far after a hip replacement, which so many of us either have had or will have. Yeah.
So now I will share with you that when I moved back to the University of Toronto in 2002, they were building a new building and having a lot of expansion. And we had children and older adults, as well as students, coming to our psychology labs to do experiments. And the furniture that the designers selected all had to be returned because none of it worked for the older adults and the children. So, we can talk a lot about that, Jillian. So maybe that should be a topic that we can return to at a future meeting if Steph wants to kind of note that. So, the issue with children is, their hands get stuck in cracks. So there are issues with children as well as with older people. And so furniture, you can get it right or you can get it wrong. And artists do not understand some of the ergonomics, even for people who do not have disabilities, but who may be different ages. So that is a great point. Did you have anything else, Peter?
No, that's all that comes to mind now.
Okay, and then I see Angus and Robin. Do you have any comments or questions?
I had a couple of comments similar to what Janet and Peter were suggesting about the air quality, because that's sort of a common design feature coming up for public buildings after the pandemic. And in terms of the seating, I myself need, generally, if I'm sitting a long time, due to my medical condition, I need ergonomic seating, and mostly for my back, spine, and neck, shoulder areas. So I understand what Peter's saying in terms of not just armrests, but how the seat itself is, the slant and angle of the back is if that can be, so, for example, in the open hallways or an audience seating, that kind of thing. Yeah, auditorium seating. Some of those could be designed, or not necessarily all of them, but, that kind of seating could be available. The other thoughts I had were around, and Angus brought this up in terms of the space looks really open and this goes more to the behavior type situations for some people around having a quiet area, an area that's a little bit maybe dimmer lighting, closer setting, where you can just go to be chill. And I think there are those situations for some people. And in terms of you answered the questions I had about signage, I think, but in terms of a lot of the lighting looks really bright, and could some areas be dimmer? Is that part of the design as well?
I'll have to say that I
The lighting, I mean.
it's definitely more of a light, bright type of space. Quite honestly, the dim areas are the municipal staff offices interior. So I have to admit, no, I think most of the public use spaces have really sort of focused on that light, bright, and you probably saw that they were against glass doors that led into the courtyard area. So taking advantage of that natural light. So it might be an area where we have to think creatively about how do we create some quieter, not as brightly lit spaces to serve community. And it might take some creative thinking, quite honestly, because it has been designed to take advantage of natural light as possible. So even though the weight room was probably the least lit room, but that's not really a quiet contemplative space necessarily.
Did you have a lighting consultant too?
Oh, all elements of this building have had, the primary architects. Drew Rose, who lives on the island, was also part of that architectural design team. So giving that local island perspective. But for every element of the facility, they've had specialized consultants working on it. So it's very true for the AV and for the lighting for everywhere throughout. They've had.
I think it's, the lighting is really important, and whether or not people have certain visual conditions, but a lot of older people, glare is a big problem. But glare is the reflection of the light, say, off of a shiny floor. So it's kind of the interaction of, what's happening outside. Is it a rainy day or a sunny day? What kind of window coverings do you have for the days when there's blaring sun and you can't see, because of the sunshine that you have to block out, even though other days you'd like it. Anyway, that I think is an interesting topic that that may also be influenced by some of the choices of the finishings, like the window coverings, and the material on the floor and how reflective it is.
Yeah,
so it may interact.
Some people have light and sound sensitivity, so I mean, that's just something I was wondering about. Yeah, so is Angus.
Absolutely. I think
sorry,
I think
Jillian, regarding the sound, I also am concerned about the noise level, the ability of the childcare area noise to spill over into the community living room. What kind of barrier is there between that space and the community living area?
It's glazing on the top. So when we were looking at that image, it looked like it was open all the way through to the living room. It's not. There's glazing there, and they've taken into account that, because it's always been the intention that those youngsters would be in that room. So they've assured that yes, that sound will be contained there.
And then within the community living room, there is a fair bit of glazing to the outdoor patio, is that correct?
Mhm.
As well as the hard surface up above between the childcare and the living room? So what
there-
my thinking is that sound bounces off of the hard surfaces so easily, and just personally meeting up with friends at the pub or wherever, it can be a real issue to not even be able to carry on a conversation if you're in a room with a lot of hard surfaces. So
Absolutely. So the top surface of that hard surface between those two rooms, that has an acoustical treatment on the top. And those baffles that are suspended from the ceiling are intended to really capture a lot of that sound. And I think one of the advantages of that technique is that we can add more of them. If we find that actually we want more of those, we can add more. So to be honest, the pub has been an example that's been discussed throughout this project more than a few times.
I'm sure.
So
Well, they make money out of having noise because people drink more and talk less.
So it's strategic
Um,
planning.
It is strategic
Well,
planning.
I have never been in a quiet bar, but I think the point that Robin made about having quieter areas. So
Yes.
even like at your front desk, you know, that reception scenario with all of the public area behind it, you know, it might be fun for a person with normal hearing, but
Mhm.
it could be impossible for somebody with a hearing loss.
Yes.
But there are technical, you know, options that can mitigate some of that. So that's a place where, anyway, we can talk about that another time. But you know, there can be technology used at the reception that would make it accessible, even if there happen to be, you know, a lot of people in the public area adjacent. So that's kind of some of these architectural things also have to work with the technology so that everybody can get something out of it. One of the things that it's a pretty big space. I don't know what distance somebody would have to walk to get from the front door from the reception to, you know, one of the destinations inside the building. But you know, in a hospital or a place, even in hotels, I've been in conferences, even the hotels now, you know, it's hard for people to walk through a large building. And you've probably seen these it kind of looks like a cross between a shopping cart and a wheelchair that you can leave out in the rain, and you don't have to have technical knowledge how to use it. If people just, you know, can't walk the whole way, and they would walk a short distance, but they wouldn't walk the long way. And so they're called staxies. I don't know if you know, that's kind of a really simple technology, but it would make the difference about whether you can get from the front door to the theater, maybe if that's a long distance for somebody to walk. And especially if there aren't handrails. I don't know if there's handrails or that sort of thing to help people walk.
There's a handrail adjacent to the ramp going up into the facility. Not currently designed in the interior necessarily, but from the front door, for example, to the door into the large multi-purpose room, if you're going to a production, that's probably about 25 feet. So
so that's quite short.
Yeah, it's not that big, really. I mean, that's very subjective.
That's interesting.
So nothing's too far in the facility.
Yeah, I will just say my field is hearing, and I do have a manufacturer of hearing aids that has a brilliant technology that's used in public spaces. So, and they've offered to provide equipment. to our committee to kind of try it out in different situations. So we can, when you get to the equipment part, I would like to know those details, but I won't take time now, but just alert you to it. Jessica and Alex, do you want to comment or ask questions?
You said you
I
had
have a
some.
couple questions.
Alex has a
Juanita?
couple questions. No, I mean, I'm interested to know about the signage and where that will be, but I know it hasn't,
You can come with me to that.
I know that
conversation.
hasn't been, completely talked about yet, so.
And my areas are kind of around three themes, as I've been sitting here listening to all the great feedback that are vision related, and one that is that Robin and Angus brought up about the quiet spaces. I won't rehash that one, but the other three areas are around accessible wayfinding within the facility, and Julian, I'd be more than happy to discuss that with you. It can be done quite low to no cost. So that's finding one's way within the facility. The other one is the fire alarms.
Oh, yes, fire.
One thing, the most disorienting sound I think I've ever been presented with is the fire alarm that just goes on and on and on. There's no break in the sound at all. Vancouver Public Library is an example of a good one where they have it, it chimes 3 times, then it pauses, announces there's a fire, chimes 3 times, and it keeps going on in a cycle. That's an example of a good one that's not as disorienting, because I've been in several fire situations, and your ability to get help from anyone else, like, you have to be able to do it yourself because nobody's paying attention. In a drill, it works fine, but in an actual fire, not so well. So that's maybe an example of something to look into. In addition to the fact that they should have, and I think the building code takes this into account, but just something to look into is strobe lighting as well for the fire alarms, for the deaf. The third area is any user-facing systems. The machines in the weight room, for example, come to mind. The debit terminals at the front counter at reception, those kind of things. Again, I can provide some discussion on some best practices around that would be helpful. For example, we've been working recently with the general store to try to actually get some accessible pin pads, because their new debit terminals are completely flat, no interface
Completely
whatsoever for a
touch
blind
screen.
person to use.
Completely touch screen with no like speech software on it that makes it usable for a blind person.
So like I actually can't go and shop there if I'm going to need to be using a debit card that I need to insert. So a couple things that we can discuss around that, and I'd be more than happy to roll that all into the same discussion when we have the Braille signage.
Great, thanks.
So I think we have spent a lot of time, but it's been really rich. Sue Ellen, is there anything you would like to add at this point? I think you're the last one on that we haven't talked to.
No, except I was at the West Vancouver Memorial Library on the weekend, and they have a couple of new little study pods, I think they're called, but they're little isolation pods, little quiet things that you could go in as a student, for example, to be in a webinar, or if you needed really quiet study, you could, and they're a little bit dim, but you can just walk in if you go in the front door and then all the way to the right, back in the corner by the Persian books. It's back there behind the washrooms. Anyway, have a look and see. They're movable. So Jillian, they might be flexible. And if you talk to Tina, I think she's aware of them too for the library. So something that could be a flexible help both for too much noise and people who are trying to make noise but didn't want to disturb everybody. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, those are kind of like a Star Trek version of a telephone booth that you can use for Zoom.
Oh.
So if you if you want to have, you know, a meeting. So that's a good idea. So I thanks so much, Jillian, and I think that really helps us. And it now you know how we might be resources, and I guess I would imagine we would hope that the new building will set an example. So as you know, other people on the island want to get some great ideas, you know, they'll be taking lessons from, you know, what we do together. And it sounds like the timing is great. So we will see you again, I'm sure, and hear you again.
I look forward
And
to it.
maybe even be in the same room. All right.
That would be great. Well, thank
Oh,
you. And I
thank
look
you very
forward to
much.
continuing this.
Thank you.
Good meeting.
Thank you, Jillian.
Bye.
All right. My grandson is crying and I'm in his room. So I will move to the next item, which is this over to Daniel. And he is going to tell us about some grant suggestions that came up. And then we are going to go from there. There is a typo, actually. It's Spark instead of Sprack. So Daniel, do you want to take over?
Sure, thanks, Kathy. So I wanted to, just highlight two grant applications that have come up. I think one was circulated by email, but to go over them with the committee. So the first is this funding from Spark BC, and they have a grant opportunity called the Local Community Accessibility Grant Program. And it is for up to $25,000 that a local government can apply to, and I'm just going to read from there, to remove barriers for persons with disabilities by implementing one of the initiatives identified in their accessibility plan or by their accessibility committee. So what the program requirement says is essentially it's to do a project that is identified in an accessibility plan, and they have some examples in there on their website and some of their documents. I think, am I sharing the right screen here? Just to show this local government-led projects, they give some examples. So they say, get bigger. So some of their examples about improving the built environment, education and awareness, policy and programs, modeling inclusive practices, communications and engagement, the use of technology. So we sort of flagged that as we feel like it's probably premature to apply at this point without the accessibility plan in place, but as it's developed and knowing that, okay, if the committee has, says this is the top priority or this is one of the top priorities, and it seems like it fits that budget, the $25,000 budget, or, you could do a piece of it with $25,000, then that would be a good piece to sort of flow from adoption of accessibility plan is to then, submit this application to actually make that one happen. And the second one is the Canada Enabling Accessibility Fund. I thought I had it open, but I lost it in my window somewhere. But this is another fund. It's for larger projects. This was actually used by the library about 3 years ago when they replaced their doors. They applied successfully for this grant to do essentially the push button doors. So to allow that accessibility. Sorry, I'm just losing it here. Where'd it go? But essentially, this is like a larger fund that is available. So it can be like up to several $1 million, but through cost sharing, so that the local government would have to fund a portion of it too. So this could be, again, as we develop the plan, if there are larger pieces that are in place, it could be something that we're saying, okay, this is something that should be, included in the budget. So depending when this plan is done, in the 2024 budget, include capital funding for this item that will be partially grant funded. I think that's all I had to present on those, but open for any questions people have.
I have
Any question?
It's Alex. Daniel, just a question. If this is something that we could discuss for accessibility improvements to the multi-use path. There's a couple sections of the path that are fairly inaccessible as they they're currently built, and it wouldn't take very much to rectify that, but love to just chat about that if that's okay.
Sure. I mean, I think that could definitely work, like the built environment example of projects. You know, it talks about designing building ramps. It talks about tactile strips, making things more accessible. So I think, you know, that would fit as a potential project.
It was one of the counselors. Is her name Judith Getty? Is that how she pronounces it? Yeah. Who raised this, you know, expressed a lot of interest in hearing accessibility. So I think this is an important item on the agenda. The way it looks to me is we should go ahead and blue sky whatever we recommend that is, and as we're creating the plan, and just kind of be encouraged that there is money of various sorts. So once we have the plan, then, you know, I don't know to what extent the committee works with the muni, but, you know, where there's a will, there's a way, and we'll find some money. I also, you know, my experience is getting grants for students to do projects, whether it's practical experience or research. And I did talk to my colleagues in the Department of Gerontology at Simon Fraser, and we identified a lot of funds where students who are working on urban design and built environment for aging, who are already working with the City of Vancouver and New West and Burnaby and Vernon, you know, it's like, well, let's do Bowen Island. So I think that also provides, you know, the manpower, there's stuff and there's people. And I just think that's really encouraging that we should go ahead and plan and then try to look at various sources for finding money. So I think we can move on from that item.
Sorry, I saw Robin had a hand up.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see. Thanks.
Sure. I just had a question about the grant process. So, for example, say this committee identifies a need for a grant situation. Does that normally go through a community engagement process, or how do you determine the priority for the grant? You know what I mean? Because is that part of the criteria?
So what this grant, I haven't looked, you know, completely into this grant and exactly what it entails, but it seems to be, it's looking for that it's something that's mentioned in the accessibility plan. It's like the key piece that it's looking for. It looks for letters, support from the local government council and support from the local accessibility committee. So it's funding, it's been administered by Spark BC, and it's funding from the province, specifically for local governments. So it seems to be tied to essentially this requirement for local governments to have accessibility committees, have accessibility plans. And so the province at the same time said, and here's some funding. So it's like a incentive, finish your plan. We have money for, you know, one of the projects in your plan. So I guess, you know, ultimately it would be council's decision of like submitting the application, but I would think they would be looking to, you know, the accessibility plan, the outreach we've already done in accessibility, and the recommendation from the committee saying this should be the first project that we submit funding for.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
All right, so now we have the next item is, so thanks, Daniel. We have the next item, number 6, is reviewing the action items from the previous meeting, and I know people have been very busy. You put a nice list in an email, Steph, and there's probably a list in the minutes.
I have it here.
So
do you want me to put it on
is
screen?
there a way we can share the list and just go down it and check in with people?
Sure. I will increase the font.
Everybody
Is that
good?
okay?
Ready for this? And then a little bit bigger would be good for me.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have to see the whole thing. We can just go down the list.
Okay. Is large enough?
Anybody need it bigger?
No,
I
works for
think.
me.
Are you okay,
Um,
Angus and Rob?
Yes. And we'll read it out loud for Jessica and Alex. Would you like me to read?
Okay.
Or-
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay, Steph, share links to the BIM master plans? Yes. Complete
I
my
think
tasks are
everybody's
always
got that.
the easiest ones, so I get to win because my job is so easy. Steph, provide the Canadian website accessibility standards guidelines. I did not, but Kathy has via email. And
So
does that go to
I
all the
sent
members?
that link in. I think I sent it to the whole committee, but if you could capture it for the minutes or
Okay,
put it in the repository on the web where resources are being shared.
yes. Oh God, I bragged at the
And
beginning. I'm not,
I-
yes.
I would hope that the Muni does abide by these, but we should just confirm
Yes.
for their website.
Okay, I'll check with Janet on that.
I can definitely
I'm sure we do.
share some accessibility feedback from the website as somebody who uses it a fair amount.
Okay.
Yep.
So-
That document will have an evaluation tool, and you can get a report card, and it's good.
Adherence, and then Alex will do Counselor Jurgensen, provide feedback. Okay. Hey, our list is bigger already than it was.
There is some
Okay.
sections that will pass the tests, but aren't actually very usable from a user perspective. As in they're
Okay.
correct, but
But from a usability.
from a usability perspective, cause some concern.
Okay.
And those are the
Meet
ones that
standards versus usability.
Yeah, and those standards will, consider vision and hearing and dexterity, but life gets complicated if people have multiple issues too. But at least we have a place to start. So I think the principle here is let's start with guidelines and standards, and not reinvent the wheel, and try to be good examples of guidelines and standards, and maybe enhance them. Okay, number 3.
Steph, post accessibility resources on the AAC webpage. So I created a, I can show you, or yeah, I'll show you. And explain it verbally as well. On the committee webpage, all the committee web pages follow a standard template. One committee that is robust, Parks and Trails actually has a fairly robust resource section, but the Economic Development Committee has a massive resource section. So we have created these like little drop-down menus there. Am I sharing the right screen?
It says reference documents.
Yeah. So here's your committee page. Accessibility Advisory Committee. And there's a purpose, members, videos, the bottom reference document. So I've done element 1 is external resources and supersede legislation category. Oh, sorry, external resources. BIM documents is element number 3. For other. So I can create more categories if we'd like to organize it differently, but just a little digital filing cabinet's been created there.
And that is open to the public as well as to us.
Yes, this is on our website under committees, and then Accessibility Advisory Committee at the bottom of the page.
Nice. So a section for standards and guidelines would be good.
Okay. I will, let me just share back the actions.
I'm glad it's you, not me, doing the Zoom gymnastics.
Sorry, section called standards and guidelines.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we can make a new folder of those. Yeah.
Sure. Are there any other sections, or does anybody else have feedback on that approach?
Maybe legislation.
Okay. I have that. That was the first one. I call it supersedent legislation,
Oh, okay, right. Okay,
meaning like above, and then the next one is BIM.
got it. Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
I was thinking, Canadian and the broader
Yeah.
context as well. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Number
Any other?
4.
Okay. Share the on-demand bus service pilot report. Well, there it is, linked right there in your agenda. Did I also email it?
I believe you did.
I
I
am
believe
not
so.
sure.
Okay, Janet received it, so
Yes.
I would, yeah. That's a hot topic with the transportation committee, but yeah, if you guys want to glance at that.
Well, I think that is one of the topics where we'll have to cross-reference with them on that. So that's
Okay.
good. We're
Okay.
getting ready.
Okay, Janet Ross, review the transportation plan and report back with elements relevant to accessibility. Not yet.
Well, I delved somewhat into the various aspects of the pilot project that Transit ran, and the report on its success was very positive. You had implied at the last meeting that they were possibly going to do that pilot project or something similar again, but looking at their website, I could find nothing about that. They did allude to a lot of promises to working with communities to expand in various areas, and it all sounded very promising. And then earlier this week, or pardon me, late last week, I happened to read an article in the Vancouver Sun that basically said that they're so short of funding and the pandemic decimated all of their financial abilities to expand services that it doesn't really look hopeful that TransLink will be of much use in expanding bus services to Bowen. However, in a casual conversation with someone involved with the transportation on Bowen, it looks as though there may be potential partnerships with people who have been involved with Bowen transportation in other capacities of private projects. Another aspect of this transportation picture came up in a report dated 2009. I believe you might have sent that to me, Steph. It was an overall looking forward type of study and survey for Bowen Island in general, covering a lot of topics, including aging well. And it was very ambitious in its projections for helping people get around, and talked a lot about neighbors helping neighbors kind of thing. And when I looked into one of the suggested ways in which neighbors can help neighbors, there was a hitchhiking app set up quite a few years ago, and it sounded as though this was a way of helping people who weren't on a bus route, just stand on the road and stick out your thumb. And it was all very kind of Pollyanna in its attitude. And yet in, again, casual conversations with a few people that I know, for instance, out on Cowan Road, they just shook their head and said, you could stand there all day and nobody would pick you up. So I think we really need to consider what are the options for people that live in those far out areas. There is no taxi. And do we really have to depend on standing at the side of the road, waiting for someone to pick you up in the pouring rain?
All right.
I don't know what to say other than I was a little bit depressed, and yeah.
So you have sleuthed out what we may have as building blocks, but it's a little bit discouraging. Sue Ellen, go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry about that. My mute was on. Yeah, I just, I don't know if this is what you were looking at, Janet. This is the transportation plan for Bowen. It's part of it. We have a whole island-wide transportation plan, and what I have here is just the appendices. Appendix A is multi-use path wayfinding strategy. Appendix B is the Cardina intersection traffic safety. Appendix C is the age-friendly community project report. And it just occurs to me that you might not have seen this yet, but I can send a link around to the transportation plan. But also,
the link's been sent. Sorry to interrupt. The link was sent.
Okay.
And here it is.
Yeah.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
So I think it was sent by email, and then also it's linked in the action items in the agenda. The main plan and the appendices here.
Thank you. And I'll
lot.
Yes, there's tons. It's a ton. I like it because it brings together a few of the reports, like the age-friendly report and things. So now I can get my hand on them and keep it handy. The other thing that you're referring to about the the Bowen Lift program,
Yes,
Janet, and that has been running for a few years. You'll see the sign with the thumb. There's a few places around the island, and there was a ton of work that went into that. And unfortunately, the COVID kind of put a stop to it for a while, so it dropped out. I don't think it'll be, it's not something that was ever anticipated to be island wide, but I think it could be a useful tool. And there was an app for a while until the funding ran out, and but it's another kind of tool that we could think about, and I've seen people use it, and I've used it too. So just to let you know, it's called Bowen Lift, and that was the sign that you see around it. It has been a program, and it could be a program again. Thank you.
So maybe we can all have a look at that before the next meeting. And I saw the date. I wanted to know the date. So it was 2018 to 2028. So COVID, kind of came nicely to interrupt the beginning. So maybe it's one of those things where post-COVID, it will be a new world.
Robin has her hand up.
What's next on this?
Kathy, Robin has her hand
up. I don't see you down there. Sorry. Go ahead, Robin.
I just wanted to mention also that transportation plan is on the website, the BIM website, and a lot of the related materials for this committee that in terms of digital accessibility for members of the community, I think it's a good thing to point out that they are available on the BIM website. So just wanted to mention that.
If everybody goes through it, we don't have to do the entire transportation plan. We just have to put our accessibility lens on it. So maybe that's a good way to read through thinking, what about this? Could we address an accessibility issue in?
And
So,
I would like to have everyone look at it through the lens of a senior, in particular, a senior who may not have the ability to drive anymore. And so if they are living off of a main bus route, they're not going to be riding their bicycle. And there is no taxi service. There are a significant number of seniors on Bowen. And once they lose the ability to drive, or their partner who has been the main driver is no longer there, or for whatever reason can no longer drive themselves, they are in a bind, and that can be the trigger that sends them off island completely. So, yeah.
Also,
okay, now I see.
a quick point there too. A lot of people with disabilities, of all variety of disabilities,
Yes,
don't drive, and don't have access to transit easily either. So I think that's a pretty encompassing need is good transportation access on Bowen. So just a thought.
I think that came through loud and clear in the survey too. Shall we go back to the list?
Sure. Sorry, don't want to keep changing the screens too much. The next thing on the list is the OCP review. So Janet was to review the transportation plan. That wasn't done, but where there is some good input there. And Peter reviewing the official community plan. And I'm just going to pull up his notes on that. My computer's so slow. Sorry. Okay, now this is going to be. So these are Peter. Tiny little letters. Can you see the oops. Where'd it go? Are you seeing it?
No.
We see your
You see
desktop.
my family?
There
Are
it
you
is.
seeing it now?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know why this is so slow. Just gonna change the font. So we don't need to spend time on this at this point. We're just kind of going through the list, but just to show an example of what it looks like. Peter went through the OCP and went through objectives and policies that talk about accessibility.
Excellent.
Okay. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Peter. That looks great.
So we'll talk
Yeah,
about that
thank you,
more in the
Peter.
next section when we talk about the planning.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great work. Thank you so much. Okay, now back to the list. I'm gonna stay off the list. The next action was Angus and Councillor Fast, but became Angus and Robin. Sorry if I didn't capture that super great in the meeting. Angus was to review the Snug Cove design guidelines and to look for elements that address accessibility in that document. I'm just pulling that up to do a quick screen share on that. Excellent work. Here it is.
I don't know if we got the full update version. We looked at
the full update.
the old version, and then we looked at the there's a poster update from 2020, I believe. A lot of work was put into
I thought I shared that as well, but I guess there was a lot of information shared. So,
Right.
but I think
Oh,
this is a
yeah,
good
there we go.
exercise. Okay, so this is the work Angus has done reviewing the Snug Cove, the older version, talking about pedestrian traffic, other things. So we'll review that later. And next action items on the list was to review the equity, diversity, and inclusion policy. That was an action for Robin Berger. And she has done that.
Everybody is so
Everyone's doing their
industrious.
actions. It's wonderful.
Okay, am I next? I think to quantify the data from the survey, which I did in a very simple way. And do you have that document to share, Steph?
I do.
Or I could
So do you want to
share
just,
it
so we
if you
just,
want.
if we're just going through the actions list, why don't we just tick them off, and then when we want to talk about the material,
Okay.
we can do that at that
Anyway, I would
point.
say it quantifies a bit, and I have some new kind of ideas it gave me, but it is no surprise based on what we talked about last time.
Okay. Sorry, so there's Peter, you did your action, and then the Snug Cove design. Oh, the parks plan, I think, is still needs some attention, which is,
That's right.
again, the parks plan and the transportation plan are massive documents. So
I can just
Jan-
report, I'll just report verbally, just that the Parks Plan has a 34 mentions of the word accessibility. It's in the goals of the Parks Plan. I could click through it for you. I'll put them all in a document, I guess, if that's what we're doing. And I wanted to let you know that there've been railings put up at Bowen Bay Beach this summer, so that becomes more accessible for seniors. So at least one of the main community beaches has a railing now down through it. All of them were designed like 25 years ago, and I'm talking Sandy, Bowen Bay, and Tunstall Bay now, to be as accessible as possible at the time. Tons of work into how far we could take the paths in either way to go down to the beach. So I won't go in detail, but I've got that background if anybody wants it. And Carla's not here from staff, but I'll just say that Sandy Beach could be more accessible. There is a road right of way from approximately the traffic circle to avoid the hill up and then the way down. So in the future, perhaps, talk to me if anybody wants any of this. Those three and Cape Roger Curtis and across from Headwaters, which is also a fairly level trail, and over here in Crippen, which is the trail from Millers to towards the lake, is the most level trail that's used most often by people recovering their mobility or losing it or coping with it. And we could, anyway, those ones all have toilets. And I wanted to mention benches. Parks, Trails, and Greenways Advisory Committee is doing a policy about benches and bench donations now. But more benches are appearing, and I can give details on that. And when I was with Regional Park as a staffer way back, like 25 years ago, I worked with a group of accessibility folks, including people with disabilities, who we did a kind of a list of trails in parks that were especially good for people who had different kinds of disabilities. So we could do the same for Bowen, just ideas. And I'd be happy to give more about this, but I'll put a few notes together like Peter and many others did, if people would like that. Okay. All right. Seeing a nod from the chair. Over, back to you.
Okay, Kathy did the data, which will come up in the next section, which we are losing time for, unfortunately, but this, it's all right.
Well, maybe it'll be just a start to what we found.
Yeah.
I think, is it my next one is this national park accessibility information. And
Yeah.
I did talk to the lead author of that.
Okay.
And their document is expected to be released to the public in March. And it will be a beautiful resource. So it will cover forest trails, it will cover beaches, it will cover everything in national parks, which has had a very comprehensive study done for the national parks. But I think we will benefit from that information. And he said he would be quite willing, to meet with us if we would like. So that is a good contact. But the report is not going to be public until March. And then
Okay.
the Demscape project, I just put the link in the chat, and I did talk to Habib Chaudhry, and he's very interested in working with us and developing some student projects. And I think this gets a little bit to, Janet's point that, with older people, we have people who answered the survey who are very healthy older adults who anticipate that one day they might need more. But there are people with dementia living on the island who are already, experiencing these challenges. So I think that will really help us on some of the aging topics. And the next point on the lineup is Janet and I did not talk yet, but I'm looking forward to that. So we'll have to get together.
Sorry. Okay.
And then it's back to you, Steph, I think.
That's back to me. Invite the manager of recreation and community services to the meeting to share information about the new community center. That was so easy. And staff bring a draft template. Thank you very much, Daniel. Okay,
And I
so
think that
outstanding.
takes us- Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So outstanding items then will be Janet and Kathy talk about Sky. I'm going to get rid of this one, Kathy. This is like in March, right? So that's been done. And then we have the parks plan and the transportation plan that still need review, possibly. Yeah. Okay. Good work.
Good job. Yeah.
Do you think that there would
So I
be
think-
value in, like as Julian was invited to field questions about the community center, to invite Carla, the manager of parks planning, to field questions about parks?
I think so.
Sometime. I'm just not too sure when it will fit with the work on
Okay,
making the plan.
we got to make the plan. Good point. Okay.
Well, or as we make it, then we'll know when we need to connect, I think. So shall we go on to the famous plan by now? So I think kind of the first step was seeing, what do we already have, which we are getting to some level of familiarity with, but there's more to learn. And the reason we're all here, I guess, initially, our first job is to help with the making of this plan. So maybe Daniel, can you or Steph just kind of remind us what is the committee's part in the making of this plan versus the staff's part, and how big a bite are we making here?
I think my answer would be, in part, it's up to how much of a role the committee wants to take. Like, I think, so if I produce the template, I'm happy to do the sort of work of almost the text, the wordsmithing of the plan, but really hoping the accessibility committee is the one who drives, like, identifying what the barriers are, what are the priorities, what are the actions. In part, like, the accessibility committee council appointed you all to the committee because they wanted to hear, your experience on Bowen and your lived experience, and have that drive the work, or drive what comes into the plan. So as staff, like, I'm happy to help sort of flesh out the plan, but hoping that the committee is the one to able to come up with those items.
So we do the fun part and you do the boring part of making it all kind of look
that's
nice
how this works.
On a piece of paper. And then one day when it's ready, somebody sends it to the province and that's the council. It's not us.
No,
Is that right?
Yeah, council would adopt it. So when you think you're ready, you have a motion, you recommend that council adopt it. It goes to council and council adopts it. And then we would be sending it to the province to say, here's our accessibility plan. And then we would start work on, here's our first grant application based on the accessibility.
So does it's the municipality's plan, but then it describes how the committee was formed and worked as part of their plan.
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay. I think that's clear to me. Does anybody else want to ask any questions? I think we're all learning. We'll kind of see how it goes, but I'm happy that we are not responsible.
Janet has a question. Janet. And then Robin.
I felt in doing a little bit of the research into some of the work that had been done in 2009, I thought, well, they already know that we need this and we need this. So where does the functionality of putting all of these plans into motion? It seems like we are putting in time. And are we just reinventing the wheel because there's been a mandate come from the province that says, well, each municipality has to come up with a plan. And now we come up with a plan, and then what? Do we fight about which things are the most important amongst our committee? Or how do we come up with ideas at a level that might mean action can be taken? I'm just a little bit unsure about the mechanisms that will make things work. Does anyone know?
I mean, I think part of that work in reviewing the other plans was sort of the highlight. I mean, to some extent that, yes, we're not reinventing the wheel, but also trying to pull some of them into one place so that we as a municipality have this actual, one document to work from to say, okay, this is the plan for the next 3 years. We can say, these are the things that we want to achieve. And have it sort of in that one place, because we may have been identified in a 2009 plan, but if it's still an outstanding item, that should be raised and said, we said we had to do this in 2009. It hasn't happened, but it is still a priority. Because I do know for plans, when they get to be a certain age, you say, well, this didn't happen, and it's like, well, did it not happen because nobody got to it, or did it not happen because priorities changed, or so having it sort of highlighted is of value.
Or because COVID, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So does that help, Janet?
To a degree. And for instance, in the case of transportation, hypothetically, it's decided that, yes, we need say like a handy dart type of van, wheelchair accessible, able to go into some of the smaller communities, to operate such as an Uber. Okay, someone lives way out yonder and they just broke their leg, but they need to go, to a doctor's appointment. They need transportation. What is available? Does the municipality need to partner with, I don't know anything about private enterprise or charitable organizations, but other communities do have options. I don't know how to research those things. How do we go about implementing things? Or is that is that our function, or is it the municipality's function to say, okay, this has been highlighted as something we really need? And is it up to the municipality to do that and figure it out?
So I think you're making a good point, which is, we can identify broad areas, but then we can get into, rather specific things that may even have been in previous reports. And then, as Daniel said, it's like, well, why didn't they happen? And how do we make them happen? But the implementation, how to implement it, or exactly what the solution is, that sounds rather ambitious for this committee, or there's a different kind of conversation that goes on between the municipality and this committee.
Definitely.
So maybe Daniel or Steph could help us with that one.
Yeah, I mean,
so we can tell you what the problems are. Do we have to tell you what the solutions are?
I guess no, I don't think. If you say the problem is that whatever it may be, this is not accessible, then if the committee, knows what the solution is, then you could be providing it in the plan too. But if you don't, I think it's enough to raise it as that's the barrier. And the action is, implement a solution. I mean, I think the plan probably would try to have some sort of difference between, like, these are things that the municipality has direct control over, and these are things that municipality would have to partner or would advocate for. So like when we had Jillian talking about community center, well, there's a change to the community center, the municipality has full direct control over it, and it's, a matter of budget and research and time and whatever to do it, versus if it's a problem with like BC Ferries, well, the municipality doesn't control it. It would be an advocate option.
One of the CSA document about accessibility standards that I sent in the email today, they make a distinction that I don't know if we've made or not, but they basically talk about accessibility geared towards people who have, permanent disabilities, and they're living with those disabilities forever. Maybe they're progressive, versus people who have temporary disabilities, because they just had their hip surgery, versus situational disabilities, because it's too noisy for anybody to hear, even if they're 20 years old and have normal hearing. So I think that's also probably going to be something that's considered in the plan, is, like what Janet said, somebody just had a surgery and they need some help getting around. That's a different kind of a problem than somebody who has dementia and they lost their license, and the rest of their life they're going to need somebody to help them to get around. And I don't know what's an example of getting around that could be kind of adverse effects, but I guess if it's snow, nobody can go anywhere unless the snow is plowed. So that's kind of a situational sort of disability. So I would imagine these solutions are going to have a little different flavor, maybe, depending on exactly why is it a disabling situation for various individuals. So Daniel, do you want to kind of open up the template? And, this is just a way to start. And I think you yourself said, you're not locked on this. It's just a way to start. And Tina also provided some information about what's an accessibility plan, and also said, let's just, put something to get us going. And how do we fit all this information that we've already gathered or we have yet to gather in some kind of organization? So can you take us through how do we start, and then we'll see where we want to go?
Sure. So this is what I'd sent around, and this is essentially the document Tina had found and sent out. And I just converted it to Word and started to put in some ideas on what we would be doing. So essentially 10 sections in the report. Yeah. And essentially, so if one is introduction, two is a summary, three is talking about framework for the work. And sorry, Alex, Jessica, I'll go through this in more detail. I'm just looking at the reading off the table of content right at the start. That wasn't in the Word doc I sent around. We just added it here just to present on screen. And then so after number 4, consultation conducted, which is where I thought we would talk about, the survey that happened and the session that happened. And possibly working these committee meetings. So even it's like, well, we've talked to the manager of recreation, and maybe there's other people who come to attend these meetings themselves to speak about challenges they found. Sort of the bulk of the meat of the plan itself are these number 5 and 6, which are also the sort of the roughest in the template in terms of what are the barriers identified, and then what is, what does the plan say would happen over 3 years? And then 7 would be monitoring that evaluation of that. So that's saying, after year 1, what's happened, after year 2, what's happened. 8 being the conclusion, so the wrap up. 9, how to give us feedback, and 10 being the appendices. So some of that might be the work that we've done to date in terms of saying this is an overview of these different plans. These are other policies. So when some of them may get highlighted earlier in the document, but then at the end of the appendices, we say, here's a full review of, some of the other plans from the municipality. So now I'm just scrolling down the template, and some of these are like,
maybe in the interest of time, can we just I assume as you say, the meat of the matter starts around 5. Shall we just go to 5?
Sure, let's jump straight there. Okay. Yeah, so what it says right now.
And then you didn't fill much in.
No, I had left that for, so what we found, so that's essentially almost like, what's the committee's bringing, or what have we found in the other documents or in the survey or the session, although possibly some of that is what we heard as well. So this could be, the survey identified this as a highlight. Actions taken was in there from the template. I'm not sure that it necessarily fits with how I would see the plan running, but that's okay. And then our 3-year plan. So this is sort of highlighting, okay, 3 categories and a priority for each category, but this is where it, it is sort of open, and I think it almost flows from what barriers are identified as priorities to address. And then the template had example categories, and I don't know how well they fit, but they're here as an example. But some of the conversations we've had already, we can think about, transportation, built environment, some of the, I don't know, health, education, procurement, but it might be parks and trails, or it might be, we talked about like websites. So almost it's like, I guess that is the communications piece. So it's like how the municipality communicates to the various terms. Yeah, I'll come back up to 5 here.
Can I bother you, Steph, if you pull up that summary of the survey, if you have that handy, because that is some found. I might find it faster than you, but
there it is.
This one,
something going. There it is. Oh, you're a magician. Okay, so this is very crude, but it's just to get us started very quickly. So there was about 100 people, and breaking it down by age, about half of them were seniors. So that kind of backs up Janet's concern about seniors. There were also people at the other end, the young adult end of the lifespan, or the child end. And the people who are answering may be answering for themselves, or they may be answering for their care partner. So for all we know, the people who are answering might have been middle-aged, but they're answering for their older parent or their younger child. But the focus does seem to be on the both ends of the lifespan. And some people did make comments about, I'm okay now, but I expect in the future I might need some help. We had, for the low income, we had 15 out of the roughly 100, and again a split of 6 seniors and 2 youths. Not everybody identified on it, so we can cross-reference. There were a couple of people who were unemployed and youth. We don't have a lot of input from according to race. For gender, there's a lot of people who were female and or LGBTQ plus. So they may have some different, it's important to have sex and gender, considerations in what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the examples, with the washrooms that we heard about is like, well, what if you are, a middle-aged man caring for your elderly mother and she needs help in the washroom? So where do you go then? So things might be relevant to some of these solutions that we want to think about. The types of disability, just kind of scanning through the items that came up. Some people explicitly mentioned hearing or vision or mobility, but I have a feeling we missed a lot. Of the categories, visible, invisible, none, or both, there were more people that had invisible disabilities. So I think that's something we should actually kind of tell ourselves, that we do have some survey data, but we don't have everything we could possibly have out of those 100 people, because it doesn't really add up. We only have 45 people who answered that question, and there's people who didn't even do the survey. So we can start, but eventually in time, maybe that's one of the goals, is just to have a better grip on who needs what. The situations were, as we all know, no big surprise. The transportation thing is the biggest. The beach access is the next biggest. Stores was a common one, and meetings is a common one. And so I think maybe we do a magic trick and we take some of these categories and we kind of see how they intersect with all these documents everybody's reviewed, and try to organize the work that way. I think that transportation and beaches and meetings, it kind of, those are, I don't think anybody doubts that those are big topics. And we already have some transportation documents, and we already have some parks documents. And we could, I don't know if there are meeting documents, but we could start with council meetings and other public meetings. And the library, I think, is very important too for facilitating access to meetings, and in the community center. So meetings, I think we can really kind of dig into. And the stores is one of the kind of, we can't tell them how to run their store, but we could give them some kind of support for best practices that we're using otherwise. I mean, it sounds easy. Actually, right now, I'm kind of feeling suspicious. Anyway, so let's just go around the table. Janet? Janet.
I am very interested in the fact that transportation had a high number of people who identified it as an issue or possibly a problem. But in thinking about it, I wondered, how do we know, particularly amongst seniors who may not have been able to go to that meeting, maybe didn't know about it, not being on the internet or on social media in any way, shape, or form. We don't know numbers, do we? Or if their transportation, maybe they live on a bus line, but can't get onto the bus because they can't get up the stairs. Those kinds of things are difficult to quantify, I think, unless someone else knows how to do that kind of
I'm
research.
not sure I'm not sure we have to quantify it. And I think maybe we can add to that list. I don't know, are you typing in that list, Steph?
This Daniel's taking my job.
Daniel's taking it. Okay, well, there's some other dimension here, which is, do we have enough information or do we need more information?
Yes.
About who exactly needs what? Because information gathering could definitely be part of the plan.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
That's what I was going to suggest also. Do we have enough research? And is part of our kind of, is our committee role to undertake more research? I think what we're trying to come up with here through the template is this is an accessibility plan that's really a sort of a short term, to plan in the short term, and that, eventually accessibility will be part of more a strategic plan. I'm not sure that, and what we're trying to do is identify the barriers, like Janet was mentioning. And I think that's part of our role, is to identify the barriers and include them in this initial plan. Identify as many barriers as we can. And that's where I was wondering about the research. I was thinking I looked at some of other municipal plans, just ran through them kind of briefly, and I think it's helpful to kind of get a bigger picture to focus in on a smaller community like Bowen. When you see the extent other municipalities go to provide a accessibility plan. I initially thought, personally, I liked the Vancouver plan because it is a strategic plan. It's a accessibility strategy. So I think identifying the barriers is really a big role for this committee to and that's
so under information gathering, Daniel, maybe we make some sub bullets. So I think under information gathering, it's more about learning to a greater extent who needs what. So that's like surveying our own population. And then I think there's this kind of research that Robin's talking about, which is looking for comparison ideas. I think somewhere on that list should be the, referring to standards. Like, are we complying with standards? Because we don't have to make them up. We just have to do self-evaluation. And that's another type of model that we can aspire to. And then what was the other? There was another kind of information. Anyway, I think that section about what do we need to know, like it's what do we know, but it's also what do we need to know. And I think that's a little different, but because that could be related to each of these topics of transportation, beach, life on the island, such as stores, and then public meetings. So maybe it's information kind of would be organized by those different topics.
Right.
And I know what the other one was. The other one under information is kind of cross-referencing about our existing other municipal policies like transportation and recreation, to see what is already there or what could be added to enhance accessibility. So we've kind of already started this.
Mhm.
I'm actually feeling like maybe this is not such a daunting task, but maybe I have talked myself into it. Robin is laughing. Angus, are you laughing? Sue
he's
Ellen is
laughing
laughing. End the meeting all laughing. Peter is smiling. What are you thinking, Peter?
What am I thinking? Well, I agree with all of these things, but what I'd like to do is identify clearly all these things which we've listed here are need to be done, but I'd like to identify things that we really can do with the constraints that we have now. We all know that there's not going to be a huge budget to provide transportation service that caters to people in wheelchairs. This is an expensive thing. So I'd like to see a little bit of looking at what can we really do right now that won't cost a lot of money, so that we can point at least to something, because otherwise, council's going to look at it to say, well, that sounds very expensive. It's a nice to have certain things, and the city of Vancouver can obviously do a lot of things that we'll never be able to do. But there probably are things we could do that are useful and helpful in various ways. And I think we should also try and look to those really practical, simple things which don't cost a lot of money.
So I think when we get to priority setting, what are the kinds of things to consider? Practical, feasible, is there even a solution? And
Doable.
then the cost, and then the cost. And then I think along with cost is what are some possible sources of funding. So Daniel kind of started off a list of possible funding sources, and some of them are going to want to fund certain things and some others. So we could say this is really expensive, but here's a program that funds exactly that. So cost and opportunities for funding, which aren't from taxes, I guess, is kind of part of the how do we set priorities? Does that kind of get what you were trying to say, Peter?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I think we are out of time, but I'm feeling actually like we can do this. Steph?
I just, if we are out of time, I would love to know if we have closure on this framework then with the edits made. Can we, as a committee, decide that this is the approach we want to take? Is that a reasonable question?
I think it's a, it's like a very rough skeleton. So I don't think it, in the end, it might, I don't know what it's going to look like, but I think these are the bare bones that we can't really go along with. I saw Sue Ellen with a thumbs up. Janet, is this, there's a lot more to flesh out here, but is this a start?
Yes, I think this is a good start. Yes.
Okay.
I'm also interested in knowing what other transportation committee might already be in existence with the Muni. And
We have a transportation advisory committee.
and what do they do?
Uh, mm.
Go for it, Steph.
Yeah, the Transportation Advisory Committee has a strong role in liaising with community members and with the BC Ferries and TransLink. Often the school districts as well, to get a lot of about aligning schedules to make sure the kids can get from the ferry onto a bus to school on time. The school bell will have to match those kinds of systems. There are recommendations about often to Public Works about wayfinding, lighting intersections, arrows on roads, the multi-use path.
So maybe if I kind of reading between the lines here, if instead of a big word like transportation, if we knew how they already organized their work, then that might help us to make suggestions that they could say, oh, that's Joe's job. You know what I
Okay,
mean?
so
I think that's the benefit of cross-referencing with some of these other plans and committees is, coordinating.
Well, my point was with looking at other municipal accessibility plans, like City of Vancouver, was to get ideas how to make ours concise, comprehensive, and deal with affordability and gear it to Bowen Island. So more like how to tighten up our framework and our template here. I think because if you look at some, they're really not comparable to ours, but I think some of them have useful aspects to add to our framework or template here. And I think if we narrowed it down to some of the best, I looked at about 5 or 6, including the Whistler one. And, when you look at the Whistler plan, I don't think it's a comparable situation to ours. Other communities would have certain parts that, and I totally agree with Peter in terms of what we want to do is start this plan, get the ensure that it's doable, and that we start with what, because I don't see us having a lot of funding or money to make a big difference, and that's not really the intention, the total intention of this committee or the plan, is to identify the barriers, get a plan in place so that we can start using the plan for action and funding. Those are some of my thoughts. So the idea of looking at other municipal plans, like I did, just do a quick scan, was what could work for our template here. Yeah, like a category.
I want to be an action.
A category that I saw in almost all the plans was housing, and that's not in ours. So I think while some of this plan might not be doable initially, I think the committee work overall, as time goes on, will tighten up on how we can advocate to have some of this be more meaningful for our community in a bigger way. I mean, that's why we're excited to be on this committee, is to how can we, improve on accessibility for kind of the whole island. Yeah.
The other thing that did come up sort of in the survey, but it was kind of more of a subheading, was the employment.
Yeah.
you know, so the people with low incomes, you know, housing and work are kind
Are
of
big.
issues for them. And I
Big.
think we could put age friendly, you know, so we could kind of slice it by the, you know, transportation, beaches, stores is kind of one way to slice it, but the age and the income is another way to slice it. And if we looked at the list, like Daniel looked at a big long list a few minutes ago and said, you know, all of these topics may not be on the Bowen list, even though they're
Yeah,
on somebody
exactly.
else's list. So I'm going to suggest, so that was a great question, Steph, about what I think I'm hearing is it's a baby step, you know, and we don't really know what the next steps are going to be, but let's start here. And I think I am relieved that we are focusing on these certain items in the outline, and that's where the meat is, and we'll start there. And whether we put the bells and whistles at the, you know, who are we, and the administrative parts up front, we can worry about. I don't think that is a big thing to buy into right now. We can just leave that to be determined.
Okay.
So if we can just kind of let this all sit in our minds and then go back through what everybody has produced, what all these reports are, and kind of think about it again, and then maybe have another meeting in a couple of weeks so that we don't forget all of this momentum that we have developed. Would that work?
Mhm.
Sue Ellen is nodding yes. Janet,
Are people
Robin.
able to schedule the meeting now if that's agreed upon?
Well, let's try it.
Who's got their calendar handy?
Oh.
Daniel
So
here.
after something like, what are we now? We are the 30th. What about the week of the 20th of November? Gives us a few weeks to digest, but not too long.
Okay, so say Monday the 20th at 4 o'clock. You got Jessica,
Works for
yes.
me.
Swellen, yes. Robin, yes. Peter, no. Nope. Okay.
I'm
No,
not sure.
I
I'm
can't do
not-
that. Sorry.
I think Jessica's hand was up before, so I'm not sure that that's a yes from Jessica.
I hate to do this, but that is like a funny week for the organization. Could we try the Thursday the 16th? That too early, Kathy?
That works. No, I think that's good too.
Thursday the 16th at 4 o'clock.
That would suit me better as well.
Okay, Janet, yes. Peter, yes. Peter's looking.
4 o'clock, yes.
4 o'clock, okay.
Sorry, what
Thursday.
day was that?
Thursday, November 16th.
No, we can't make that.
Okay. I'll try one more.
Mondays are best,
Oops.
or Friday for us,
Oh,
or later on. I think.
Monday's a holiday of that week. Monday is not good for Peter on the 20th.
Right. What time on the 16th?
4 o'clock.
It's a busy day.
Is there a reason why you go for 4 o'clock?
Because that's when Angus gets off work.
Okay.
Oh, he gets off work. We get it's a 2:20 ferry now.
Okay.
And often that's pretty late. So
Okay.
it's 4 o'clock, I guess, is okay. It's just he's also training. So that's his training day for swimming.
Thursday is?
Yeah.
Okay. So no Thursday.
So we're usually on
Hmm.
the 3:30 or the 4:30 ferry.
Okay.
I guess we could do 4:30 on the, but that's a super long day for us, you
That's
know.
okay. What about Wednesday the 15th at 4:30?
That's my birthday.
Oh my gosh.
We can have a cake in person.
Oh,
We
I'm gonna be busy.
okay. I can't do the Friday. I'm back on uh, uh 5:30 on the 22nd, Wednesday.
have the 20. Yeah, well, that's okay.
Yeah, we could do that. Everybody.
5:30 on Wednesday, November when did I say?
22nd?
22nd.
22nd. Okay. Okay. Any objections to that?
Sorry, what time? 4:30?
5:30.
5:30. Okay. On the
Did
22nd.
did Jessica and Alex weigh in?
Yeah.
I can follow up with them offline and come back if it's a no.
Okay.
I
Sounds
think, oh,
great.
here she is.
It's okay. It's okay for me. Alex did have to step out, so I will have to ask him and see if
Okay.
he can get back to you. I don't know of any reason it wouldn't be okay,
Okay.
but
Thank you. And would
All
people
right.
like will
Also
be
have
and
I have a
council?
question when I can.
Mhm.
As to whether the framework that we were talking about, that template was sent out by email. I didn't see it. That doesn't mean it wasn't sent out, but
It was. Can
I
you
okay.
think I-
resend it?
yeah.
I can go look. I can look for it then, but okay. Thanks.
We can resend it, Jessica, if it's easier.
Okay, so everybody's going to do a rethink and mull over what we've all done. Thanks so much for your work. And we will reconvene in about 3 weeks. Daniel, were you?
I was just going to say, can we add as an action item, just if people want to generate their ideas for that number 5 and 6, so like what barriers, you know of that you've found, or even categories. And then if people can circulate those even in advance of us setting the next meeting, then we can bring them all together, and maybe do some work to say, oh, look, we've got these ones are all in common. They can kind of go together.
Mhm.
And then people aren't trying to think of them on the spot at the next meeting.
I think that's a great idea because I believe
Mhm.
Alex and Jessica already have some of that
Mm-hmm.
list
Mhm.
together.
Can we?
Peter, put your hand up.
Yeah, and my question is just, so are we assuming that's a 2-hour meeting at 5:30 and it's online?
I
Would
think
you like
it
to?
can be in person.
Happy to meet you.
Which do people prefer? I guess we should have a vote on that.
I prefer online.
Okay.
I need to be at a choir practice that evening, so I may have to leave a bit early from the meeting, depending on its length.
2 hours is a long time.
Yeah.
And I think it might be better to have an hour or an hour and a half rather than wait longer.
Mhm.
I agree.
And maybe we could try to just focus on this planning template and use the full hour for that. Okay, I'm seeing waves from Robin and Sue and Steph.
I've got a question.
What would you?
Well, if we are, did I capture correctly that the reference to plan elements will be included in our plan? Like reference to existing accessibility elements in existing BIM master plans? That's going to be included in the plan? Daniel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
think so.
So if it is, then we really should not sort of skate over the ones that haven't been done yet. I don't know that maybe Sue Ellen doesn't have to be the one to do the parks plan because
Oh, I'll do it. No, I've got it all
okay.
ready. I just haven't
Okay.
it up.
So Janet, are you able to go through that entire transportation plan and the appendices and note? I could support you if you want to have a call offline. I can.
I think I did skim over it briefly.
No, but I mean, like, prepare something for the group on a piece of paper.
What exactly would you like me to present from it?
So do you want to talk offline? I can help you
Sure.
with that. And
Yeah.
but if you don't want to do it, we can figure something else out as well.
No, that's fine. If you
Okay.
chat with me offline.
I will give you a call tomorrow for sure on that.
Oh, not
Great.
good.
Okay, good. Good.
So are we doing
So I think just to, sorry, just for,
in
so
person or
I think
on Zoom?
online is the
Mm.
verdict.
Okay.
Yeah. So Peter, just, I think it was you who said, you know, fill in topics in that place that we started filling topics. But I think it's better if we kind of, you know, do continue with the review of documents. You've already done yours, and others have done theirs, but now we can complete it. And Steph is gonna help to polish that up so that we can understand the context for some of the things we have identified. But then it also, if people think of things we have not identified, what is missing, then we could kind of add them to the list. Does that work? Yeah, I think we all have to go.
Yeah. This is
that,
sorry.
Peter?
Is Angus, was it better to be live or online, or do we want to do hybrid?
You like online?
Yeah,
Online's fine.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry for interrupting.
It seems a bit long for, yeah, but that's.
We had
Well, having
okay.
it short might be better for everybody.
Yeah,
like
I think so. Yeah. Right? Yeah.
Yes,
All right.
definitely.
So are we, so Daniel, you were just go back to this generating ideas. Like, how would we do that? And do you really mean it?
I do in the sense that if people have ideas and have thoughts or have thoughts on the barriers or the categories, then I can sort of pre-populate some of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can I support Daniel on that? There's so many ideas come up verbally in these meetings that are just going in minutes.
I think that that might be the perfect solution. So of the list we have, where we already have made a start, and then if Steph and you kind of work on, these are the pieces that, we've already got some ground on, and then we can leave kind of a space for missing bits or things that don't have a home by the time we get to the next meeting.
Yeah, and then like I said, yeah, anyone who wants to send, I guess, to the whole committee email, but then I can work to incorporate into there, or I'm happy to meet here at the hall if people want to come and meet to have ideas, and they can just talk to me and I can populate. Yeah.
Okay, very good. All right. Are we ready to adjourn? Going once, going twice. Everybody vote to, Yes. Okay. So I'll do Janet and Robin, and see you in a few weeks, if not sooner.
Thank you. Thanks
Thank
so
you
much, everybody.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.